Yesterday we are discussing about the heat transfer from a plane wall. From a plane wall having temperature at the two sides T1 and T2. And this we have found out that the heat flux is given as K into T1 minus T2 by L. Now the heat flux in the positive direction, that is given as K into T1 minus T2 by L. Now if we want to find out the heat transfer rate, then if we want to find out the heat transfer rate, then what is necessary, what we have done over here is that we have made a, because heat transfer rate is a scalar quantity, whereas heat flux has a direction, which way it is moving. Like here, the heat flux that we have taken is in the positive x direction. Now, so the heat transfer rate, that is a scalar quantity that we can obtain by making a dot product of the heat flux and the surface area vector. Now, if you see on the left hand side, if you see the wall on the left hand side, on the left hand side the heat flux is in the positive x direction, and this wall, this surface on the right side of the wall, that is pointing upward, the direction is negative. So heat flux is in the positive direction, the area is pointing towards the negative x direction. And if we make a dot product, then it will be the magnitude of heat flux into surface area multiplied by the cos theta, which is the angle between the positive x direction and the negative x direction, and that theta is equal to 180 degree. So cos 180 becomes equal to minus 1. So it becomes equal to, the heat flux becomes negative. And not heat flux is negative, the heat transfer rate is negative. That indicates that the heat transfer is entering into the surface, because the direction of the area is negative, and the heat transfer rate is negative, means it is the opposite of that thing. So it is entering into the, it is not following the same direction as the surface area. So it means in this case it is entering into the surface. Whereas if you see the right hand side heat transfer rate, again if we make a dot product of the heat flux and the area, heat flux is in the positive direction, area is also in the positive direction. So the heat transfer rate will be the dot product of heat flux into area, that becomes equal to the magnitude of the heat flux into magnitude of the area into cos of the angle between them, which is equal to 0. The angle between the heat flux and the area is 0, so cos of 0 is equal to 1, so it becomes positive. That means it is also in the positive direction, whereas it is in the, here what is happening is that it is just opposite to the area vector. The transfer rate on the left hand side is opposite to the area vector, that means it is going inside, and on the right hand side the heat transfer rate is in the same direction as the area. So what will happen, it will go out of this thing. Now, having said that thing, we'll take a more complex case, because what happens is that it's very difficult to measure the surface temperature T1 and T2. Normally, what we do is that we do not know the surface temperatures. We cannot measure them correctly or accurately, T1 and T2, so easily. Because if you bring a thermocouple in contact with the surface, what will happen is that it will show an average temperature of the surface as well as the ambient air in which also it is in contact. If you put a thermocouple or a thermometer, any temperature sensing device on the surface of a body, then part of the thermocouple will be in contact with the body. Another part of the thermocouple will be in contact with the fluid. So it will give us an average temperature of the body surface and the ambient temperature. So sometimes what is done is that if we cannot measure T1 and T2, or if we do not know the values of T1 and T2, then we can measure the free steam temperature of the fluid on either side of the wall. Now we'll take a case where we have a wall and we measure the free steam temperature of the fluid on the left hand side of the wall, and there is another fluid on the right hand side of this wall, and we measure the free steam temperature. The free steam temperature, it means that is a temperature at a far away where there is no variation of temperature. If you measure the temperature over here, or if you measure the temperature at other points away from the wall, you'll see that the temperature is constant, and that temperature we call it as the free steam temperature, indicated as T infinity 1. Similarly, if you take a temperature measuring device, and if you go on recording the temperature at different points away from the wall, you see that near to the wall there is a change in temperature. But as you move sufficiently away from the wall, the temperature becomes constant. The temperature which it records does not show any change. And then that temperature where we don't find any change, which is sufficiently away from the wall, that temperature is called the free steam temperature of the fluid on the other side of the wall. So this is indicated as T infinity 2. So this is side 1 and this is side 2. The freeze temperature on side 1, free steam temperature of the fluid on side 2. And near to the wall, what happens? Near to the wall, if this is a hot fluid, as we can see, this temperature is higher. We take that the temperature axis is on the y-axis, along the y-axis. So what we see is that this is at a higher temperature and this is at a lower temperature. So heat on the whole will flow from the fluid through the wall and out of this fluid, out of this wall into the fluid. So ultimately the hot fluid will transfer its heat to the wall, from the wall, one surface of the wall, through different layers of the wall. It will come to the other surface of the wall, and finally it will come out of this wall into the colder fluid that is on the right hand side, as it is shown over here. Now if we record the temperature, what we see is that although the temperature far away is constant, but near to the wall we can observe there is a sharp change or rapid change in temperature. In this case, it is the change is decreasing, and because the heat is going only in the direction of decreasing temperature. And here also, if we measure the temperature, we can see that the temperature drops rapidly, but some distance away it becomes constant. Now the zone into which it drops rapidly, that zone is called the thermal boundary layer zone. And because there are two fluids, so there are on the two sides, you have two different thermal boundary layers. Here also there is a thermal boundary layer within which the temperature changes, and beyond which there is no temperature change. The region beyond that thing is called the free steam zone, and the region inside that zone where the temperature varies, that is called the boundary layer zone. And as we have seen, the temperature inside, there is always a linear one. Inside this wall, if there is no heat generation, then the temperature variation is a linear one. So the inside temperature will be a linear one, and inside what happens, as yet we don't know. We have shown some kind of a non-linear variation. Here also there is a non-linear curve variation of temperature. Now, what we do not know here is the surface temperature on the wall, this surface temperature on the wall. Let us temporarily indicate them as TS1 and TS2, both of which are not known. What are known are the free steam temperature, which we can record easily with the help of a temperature measuring device, the free steam temperature. So what we know is T infinity 1 and T infinity 2. What we do not know is TS1 and TS2. And the heat will flow from the hot fluid and it will flow towards the cold fluid. And the heat flux will be occurring all along in this direction, whose magnitude we have shown it as Q suffix x. Now, Now let us see how we can find out the heat transfer rate from this side to this side that is occurring under steady state. We have taken a case of steady state heat transfer across a wall where there is no internal heat generation, and on the two sides of the wall there are two fluids at two different temperatures. By fluid temperature we mean the free steam temperature of the fluid, not the near wall temperature of the fluid. Now, how the heat will flow from the hot fluid to this wall, and if heat is to flow, then the wall temperature must be lower than the free steam temperature. Then only the heat will be deposited by the fluid onto this wall. And suppose this temperature is TS1. If it were known, we could find out the heat transfer rate by convection would have been equal to some convection coefficient which is given here as H1, the convection coefficient into the surface area into the temperature difference. So the heat transfer rate will be equal to H1, the heat transfer coefficient, the area of this surface A1 into the temperature difference is T infinity 1
minus
minus
TS1.
TS1 minus TS1. Similarly, please.
স্যার বলছিলাম লেফট হ্যান্ড সাইডে তো স্যার ডিউ টু কনভেকশন টি ইনফিনিটি ওয়ানটা তো স্যার লেস হবে না স্যার টিএস ওয়ান এর থেকে স্যার?
তাহলে কোন দিক থেকে কোন দিকে হিটটা যাবে?
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা,
গরম ফ্লুইড থেকে ঠান্ডা ওয়ালে হিট যাবে নাকি মানে ঠান্ডা ওয়াল থেকে গরম ফ্লুইডের দিকে হিট যাবে? First of all, we have assumed that this is a hot fluid and this is a cold fluid. Okay, and the heat will try to escape from the hot body towards the cold body. So heat has to flow in this direction, and if heat has to flow in this direction, the past what will happen from the hot fluid, it will come to the wall, and if the wall is colder, then only it will be able to approach to the wall. Again, the heat has to flow from left to right, so there has to be a continuous drop in temperature across the wall. And again, from the outer surface of the wall, the heat has to go to the colder fluid, so there has to be a continuous drop in temperature from the right hand side surface of the wall to the other fluid, which is the colder fluid. So there will be a continuous drop, and the heat will flow only in the direction where there is a temperature drop. Is it clear?
Okay.
And sir, added on, we are neglecting the effects of radiation, I guess.
Can you let me increase the volume of my speaker? Can you please repeat what you are saying?
Sir, did you neglect the effects of radiation?
We have neglected the effect of radiation, you can say, or you can say this radiation effect also can be combined into this H1.
Achha.
It will be a combined heat transfer coefficient. Now the heat transfer rate, if we define it as Q dot, capital Q dot, that Q dot will be equal to what? That Q dot will be equal to the heat transfer coefficient into the surface area into the temperature difference between the hot fluid and the comparatively colder surface of the wall. The hot fluid temperature is T infinity 1, and the left side surface has a temperature TS1 which is not known. This TS1 is not known. By some means if we know H1, but we do not know what is this value. But it will not create a problem ultimately. And if it were known, then this would have been the heat transfer rate. The Q dot would have been equal to H1, the heat transfer coefficient, into the surface area, into the temperature difference between the fluid and the body wall. And the same heat has to flow across the thickness of the wall. And that magnitude is given by K into A into TS1, the surface temperature on the left hand side, minus the surface temperature on the right hand side of this wall, divided by L. This is the temperature gradient, because we know that if the body is under steady state and there is no internal heat generation, then inside the body and there is a one directional heat flow, then the temperature change will be a linear one, and the gradient will be equal to that higher temperature minus lower temperature by L. That is the gradient in the positive direction.
Sir,
Uh,
so when you have written over there K A into K del T by L, what is that K? K of the fluid that is being flowing, or is it the K at the surface of the body we are speaking of?
we are considering the heat transfer inside the wall, across the wall,
Okay.
with the conductivity of the wall bit. Okay.
Mhm.
And that heat transfer has to be equal to also the heat lost by the wall to the outside fluid. That is similar to this equal to H2. The H1 value and H2 value, they may be different. In fact, they will be different. H2 into area, the surface area, into the temperature drop from the outer surface of the wall, the other surface of the wall, Ts2 minus T infinity 2, which is the coldest temperature of the cold fluid. Out of this T infinity 1 is the highest temperature, then the Ts1, then by magnitude Ts2, and this is the least one, T infinity 2. So that is the order of temperature. That is why heat is flowing continuously from left towards the right. And when these three will be equal, these three will be equal, what is this part? That the heat convecting into the wall, that is equal to the heat by convection, and heat flowing across the thickness of the wall, and that will be equal to the heat which is convecting out of the wall. These three will be equal when it follows the three things. One, it is under steady state. Why? What will happen if it is not under steady state? If the body is not under steady state, that means its temperature is changing. And when its temperature is changing, its energy content also will change. That is why it is a manifestation of the energy content change is given by the temperature change. Temperature change is the manifestation of energy content changing or not. If the energy content changes, then the temperature will change. If the energy content does not change, then the temperature will not change. In this case, except in phase change type of thing, there another thing can happen. If there is no phase change, that is the wall is not melting into liquid, or a liquid is not melting into vapor, vaporizing into vapor, then if the body is not undergoing through any kind of phase change, then when the energy stored becomes more, temperature becomes more, and if the stored energy becomes less, then the temperature becomes less. Now, if we consider that the body is under steady state and the whole phenomenon is happening under steady state, that means that the body's energy content is not changing. And when the body's energy content is not changing, then whatever heat it receives from the hot fluid, the same amount of heat has to be rejected into the cold fluid. And at any layer, the same thing will happen, that any layer, whatever it receives in terms of heat, the same amount of heat it has to give up. Then only the energy content of any things of the layer will remain constant, and thereby the temperature remains constant, and whatever heat it receives, it gives up the same heat. It does not store or spend any energy from itself. So that is one requirement. Second requirement is that there is no internal heat generation. Because if there is internal heat generation, then whatever heat it receives, maybe it may leave more amount of heat, because that more amount of heat comes from the internal generated heat. So if this is equal to Q0 and this is equal to QL, then this QL should be equal to Q0 plus the total rate of heat generation inside this volume. That can be the case. But here we are taking a case where there is no internal heat generation. So the second requirement is that there must not be any internal heat generation. What is the first thing? That the body should be under steady state. The second is that there is no internal heat generation. And another third thing should be there is that suppose what we are assuming is that whatever heat comes in from the left, it is coming out from the right along X. Now suppose there is another path of escape for the heat. It flows, some part of the heat flows along Y. Then we cannot say whatever heat enters has to be equal to the heat leaving from the right hand side, because there may be another path of heat escape. Now, if we consider the heat is flowing only along one direction, so then what will happen? Then whatever heat comes in, that has to come out through this path only, because there is no other way for the heat to leave. So these three will be equal when the three things will be satisfied. Number one, it should be under steady state. Number two, there should not be any heat generation. And number three, the heat flow is one dimensional. So these three we can write under the special condition of one dimensional steady state heat conduction without any heat generation. Then we can say all these three will be equal. There's the heat coming in from the left hand side fluid onto the wall, that is equal to the heat flowing across the thickness of the wall, and that is equal to the heat coming out of the right side surface of the wall into the right side fluid. So these two will be equal when the body is under steady state, and these temperatures are also under steady state, and there is no internal heat generation, and the heat flows only along one direction. There is no other way for the heat to leave. So you don't require to consider any other component of heat flow. Now remember, one more thing is that we have written this thing. Although we have written this thing, we cannot compute this thing separately because TS1 is not known. The surface temperature on the left side of the wall is not known. Similarly, we cannot evaluate this part because TS1 and TS2 are not known, so the heat conducted across the thickness of the wall is also not known. And here also, if you see TS2 is not known, so we cannot find out this value also as a whole. Now, what we are doing is that we can rewrite this equation in terms of this Q dot equal to temperature difference divided by 1 upon H1A. And if you see this thing, it is something like your delta T by is considered to be some kind of a resistance. And when this resistance will be there will be a finite temperature drop across a thickness of the fluid. You see there is a temperature drop. Why there is a temperature drop? That is because on the path of heat flow there is a resistance, and that resistance is called the convective resistance. It's called the convective resistance. So it is a convective resistance offered by the left hand side fluid, and the smaller the value of H, the smaller the value of A, the larger will be the resistance. Okay. Now for a given geometry, if the value of H is small, then the resistance will be large. On the other hand, the larger the value of H, the smaller will be the resistance, and even with a smaller temperature drop, the heat flow can occur. Okay. Now there will be a special case where H approaches to a very large value, which we mathematically call it as infinity. Now when H approaches to a very large value, then the resistance approaches to 0. And then what will happen? Then your drop also will be approaching to 0. That means the surface temperature in that type of situation where the value of H is very large, in that case the surface temperature can be taken as equal to the fluid temperature, free steam temperature of the fluid, and that will happen if and when the value of H is very large. I must give you some idea about what can be the possible value of H. There are many situations are possible, and accordingly the value of H will change. This H, the constant that we have introduced over here, the heat transfer coefficient, it is not like a universal constant. For a given situation, it may have a value, the value of which will depend on the nature of the fluid. If it is air and if it is water, under all other similar situation, the value of H for air will be much smaller compared to the value of H if the fluid is water. Depending on the conducting nature of the fluid, the value of H also will change. If the fluid has a poorer conductivity, then the value of H will be low. If comparatively the conductivity of the fluid is high, then the value of H will also be high. Not only that, even for the same fluid, if the fluid flows at a smaller velocity, the value of H will be smaller, and for a larger velocity of flow, the value of H will be larger. Because the faster the fluid flows, the faster it can deposit or take away the heat. So the transfer of heat from the fluid to the wall will be faster if the velocity is faster, and it will be smaller, the heat transfer rate will be smaller if the value of velocity is smaller. And in fact, it will be the least when the fluid is a stagnant one. And it cannot have that type of situation. There may be by stagnant we mean that the velocity is very small. In that case, the value of H will be also very small. Also, it depends on what is the orientation of the wall vis-a-vis the direction of gravity. Okay, so there are many factors which will govern what will be the value of H. Whether this fluid flow is because of forced convection, whether this fluid flow is because of density variation, which we call it as the natural convection. So all these factors will determine the value of H. Now, for a given situation, we will be able to find out the value of H, and this value of H can vary over a wide range. H, what is the unit of H? Can somebody tell what will be the unit of H through a dimensional analysis?
So joule per second per meter square per Kelvin.
This is what? Joule per second is what? The rate of heat transfer is joule per second, that is what? Per meter square per Kelvin temperature difference. So the unit of H will be equal to watt per meter square. Area has a unit of meter square. So watt per meter square per Kelvin temperature difference, or watt per meter square per degree centigrade temperature difference. So the unit of H will be watt per meter square Kelvin or degree centigrade. And the unit for K will be equal to what? K will be watt
per meter
Kelvin. And what I tried to say is that this value of H can be something like, say, 10 watt per meter square centigrade. It can be even very high, like of the order of 10 to the power 5. When it can be very high, that if there is a phase change phenomenon, like a vapor is condensing on the surface. Vapor means it is at a higher temperature and the wall is at a colder temperature. Then the moment the vapor comes in contact with a temperature of the wall which is less than its saturation temperature, then the vapor will try to condense on the surface of the wall. And when there is a condensation process, which is some kind of a phase change process, there the value of H can be quite high, maybe of the order of 10,000, 1 lakh, something like that. So the value of H can be very high when there is a phase change. One example may be condensation, another example may be vaporization or boiling. So under those type of situation, when there is a phase change particularly, the value of H can be even as high as 10 to the power 5 watt per meter square Kelvin. But for normal situation of what you call normal convection without any phase change, the value of H can be as low as something like of the order of 10 or 100. So it may be something like 10, 20, at the most it can be something like 150, 200 like that. That is also very high under no phase change condition. The fluid does not change its phase from liquid to vapor or vapor to liquid or from liquid to gas or gas to liquid. So there can be a wide range of value of H depending on the situation that we are considering. Now coming back to this thing, we can rewrite this as delta T divided by 1 upon H1 into A. This is called the convective resistance. Here again, we cannot find out because of the same reason that TS1 is not known. Similarly, we can cast this in terms of delta T by resistance, delta T by resistance. What is the resistance? L by K is another resistance that we call it as the conductive resistance, because the mechanism of heat flow inside the wall is by conduction, whereas the mechanism of heat flow from a fluid to a surface of a body is by convection. So this is a convective heat flux offered by the left side fluid, is a conductive resistance offered by the wall, and then the third term, there is a convection from the outer surface, the surface at x equal to L, to the cold fluid. That similarly we can write it as delta T at Ts2, the surface temperature of the wall, minus the free steam temperature divided by the corresponding convective resistance given by 1 upon H2 into A. Now, if these three are equal and constant, we can write it as equal to, simply we can add all these things, divided by add all these things. This is also equal to all these things. The advantage is that if you add these two, then this TS1 will cancel. Similarly, when you add these two, this TS2 will cancel, because they are the troublemaking things, because their values we do not know. But the moment this TS1 is cancelled, TS2 is cancelled, what remains is the known free steam temperature T infinity 1 and the other known free steam temperature T infinity 2. The so-called unknowns in the form of TS1 and TS2, they have now self-cancelled within themselves. So it becomes the overall temperature difference between the hot fluid and the cold fluid, the overall temperature difference between the hot fluid free steam temperature and the cold fluid free steam temperature, whose magnitudes are known, divided by the total resistance on the path of this overall heat flow, given by 1 upon the convective resistance on the left hand side, the conductive resistance of the wall at the middle, and the convective resistance of the other side of the offered by the other side of the fluid. So this is the total resistance, and heat transfer will be overall temperature difference and divided by the corresponding overall resistance between the 2 points 1 and 2. So now if we see this Q dot is fully derivable, because all these values are known. These values are known, we can find out Q dot. Now once you find Q dot, therefrom you can find out this unknown temperature TS1. This Q dot is known, so now you can find out TS1. Similarly, now you can find out TS2, because now that Q dot is known. And if you see, there is further to it, that if you see this thing, then it is something like, we'll come back to this, is something like a electrical analogy, that you have a temperature T infinity 1, the free steam temperature of the hot fluid, then there is a temperature drop from the free steam temperature of the hot fluid to the left hand side temperature given by TS1, the surface temperature of the wall TS1, and there is a temperature drop from T infinity 1 to TS1, and that is why the heat is flowing in the direction of temperature drop. And the heat flux, it is not heat flux. This should be Q dot X. It is written in a lowercase. It should be Q dot X, capital Q dot X. That is the heat transfer rate over the entire surface area of the wall. That is why this area has come. Now, this temperature drop is also associated or due to a resistance component. That resistance is because of the convective mechanism of heat transfer. So this we call it as the convective resistance. And then there is a in between conductive resistance offered by the wall, and due to which the temperature falls from TS1 towards TS2, and finally at the outside from TS2 to T infinity 2, there is a third temperature drop, and that is due to the convective resistance offered by the other fluid. Now, and the heat is flowing as if through three resistances in series, and the total resistance is equal to the summation of these resistances, the convective resistance 1, then the conductive resistance plus the convective resistance 2, and because of that total resistance there is a overall temperature drop from T infinity 1 to T infinity 2, whose magnitudes are known, and under those situations we can find out Q dot X, capital Q dot X, not small qx, because we will be using small q to indicate heat flux, the heat transfer rate per unit area. And that is what I said, is that the overall temperature drop divided by the R convective 1 plus R conductive plus R convective 2, and summation of these three, call it as the total resistance, and that is equal to the Q dot equal to the overall temperature drop by the total resistance, and this is written in form of resistance. Now we can write this as also equal to 1 upon resistance is nothing but something like a conductance. So U into A, we can introduce a factor where A is the surface area and U is the overall heat transfer coefficient. U is called the overall heat transfer coefficient. Now normally in building technology, this thing will be frequently used for measurement or evaluation of heat transfer rate across the wall of a building, and it is required for HVAC engineers, the heating ventilating.
So we need it in the heat load calculations, no?
It will be required for by refrigeration people if you want to calculate what is the heat load of your room, so that you can use an appropriate tonnage of the refrigerator. Then you require to calculate the heat load on through across the wall. It may be the heat coming inside the room when the surrounding temperature is hotter, or it may be the heat lost from the room to the outside colder environment. Whatever be the case, we require to calculate this thing, and for that they are more accustomed to using this in the form of not resistance but in the form of U value into area. This U value is what you see. In fact, if you manipulate this thing, R total equal to 1 by UA, then you can write this U will be equal to, simply it will be divided of this per unit area. Basically it is per unit area. So it becomes 1 by H1 plus L by K. The resistance was L by Ka. So if you take out this A, it goes over here. It becomes equal to 1 by H plus L by K plus 1 by H2 whole into A into T infinity 1 minus T infinity 2. So that A remains over here, and the remaining 1 by H1 plus L by K plus 1 by H2, that forms your U, the overall U value, which is termed as overall heat transfer coefficient. And again, if you see, the magnitude of this will be, the unit of this will be equal to watt or meter square or Kelvin. The unit will be similar to the unit of H, because it is having the same unit of U, and H they have the same unit. So it is watt per meter square Kelvin. This also will be watt per meter square Kelvin. This is what, this is equal to watt per meter Kelvin per meter. So it becomes watt per meter square Kelvin, like that. So the unit of this is watt per meter square Kelvin. Unit of H is watt per meter square Kelvin. U is called the overall heat transfer coefficient. This is something like the heat transfer coefficient considering one side of the fluid. But this takes care of if you have a wall and across that wall there are two different fluids, and both the fluids are convecting into the wall and out of the wall. Then if you take the corresponding overall thing, that overall thing is taken care of by this U value. And what people in the air conditioning industry they use under different situation and under different construction of the wall, considering the material of the wall, the values of U's are available in a handbook. So from there they take the value of this U to calculate the heat loss, which you call it as the heat load, which is to be taken care of by the refrigerating machine or heat pump. This is called the overall heat transfer coefficient, having a unit of watt per meter square Kelvin and the value will be same in watt per meter square degree centigrade, because this Kelvin is not because of any one temperature, but because of temperature difference. Now the temperature difference between two values will be the same whether you take both of them as Kelvin or both of them as degree centigrade. So if the temperature difference is 5 degrees centigrade, then the Kelvin temperature difference also will be 5 Kelvin, because that 273 will cancel with 273 over here. So the magnitude will remain same. Only thing, you can use it per Kelvin if your temperature is in Kelvin, or degree centigrade if your temperature is in degree centigrade. That also doesn't matter. Only thing, you have to take both of them simultaneously into Kelvin or degree centigrade. Now, this is called a kind of a composite situation where we have convection on one side, conduction in between, and convection on the other side. Okay. And when we will be using this thing, if we repeat that we'll be using this thing under a steady state heat transfer situation where there is no internal heat generation. And the third thing is that the heat flow is one directional. There is no multiple path of heat escape. There is only one way heat will enter, only one way for the heat to leave. So the heat entering will be equal to the heat leaving through the only path, that is outgoing. If you have multiple paths, then you don't know which way heat is leaving by how much magnitude. What fraction of heat is leaving along X, what fraction of heat is leaving along Y. You cannot use it. Now, by a similar type of situation, the wall that you have considered is one wall. You have plus after this. Do you have plus after this immediately afterwards?
No, sir, from 12 by.
So I will try to hardly finish within 11, and then maybe another 5 minutes per roll call. Now, instead of one wall, there may be 3 layers of a wall, in a wall. And they may be, for example, if it is a furnace wall, then inside of the furnace, you may have a refractory bricks, layer of refractory bricks. Refractory bricks are something that can withstand very high temperature. Otherwise, if you use a normal brick, that brick can undergo some kind of a glass formation process. And it may deform, it may distort, it may break out. So, what is done in a normal furnace where the inside temperature is quite high. Suppose this is the inside temperature quite high of a furnace, and outside you have cold atmospheric air. And you require to minimize the heat loss from the inside of the furnace. You require to minimize this thing, because then your energy, otherwise your energy consumption rate for the furnace should go up, and efficiency of the furnace will be very small. So you should want that there is very little loss of heat from inside the furnace to the outside air. Many things will happen as a consequence if there is too much of heat loss. First of all, energy is unnecessarily going out in the form of loss into atmosphere. Secondly, the atmosphere also becomes quite hot. If it continuously rejects heat at a very high rate, then the inside temperature of the room where the furnace is placed, that also will tend to go very high. So you should try to have minimum heat rejection from the wall of the furnace into the room that where the furnace is situated. Now suppose this is the inside of the furnace, then what should be done is that there should be multiple layers of that thing. The first layer should be made up of something that can withstand this high temperature. So what is done is that normally you can use some kind of a high temperature resistant or high temperature withstanding material. Normally it may be made up of refractory bricks. Then they may not have sufficient insulating capacity. Then what is done is that you may use some kind of a insulating layer inside somewhat, where the temperature has dropped somewhat, so that it comes to a range where the temperature can be withstood by the material for making the wall insulating. So it may be a high temperature a material which can withstand high temperature for the refractory lining. Then there may be a layer of material that offers the maximum amount of resistance by using a material that has a very poor conductivity, thermal conductivity. Then outside everything, there may be a structural layer, outer casing of the furnace that may be made up of some kind of a, what you call, metallic sheet metal or thick plate of metal. So the outermost layer may be metallic thing. Somewhere what is done is that even if the temperature outside is very high, then you may require to have another layer of insulation like that, because you cannot interchange this thing, because if the temperature here is sufficiently high, then you can use a material over here and you cannot put the is material where the layer 1 is the innermost or layer 2 is the in between or 3, because they are adding to their resistance. So the heat transfer rate is concerned. But what will determine the order of placement of these layers is what is the safe working temperature of the respective material. This refractory has a very high working temperature. It can withstand a very high temperature. Insulation may, their working temperature may not be as high, and still lower will be the working temperature of the structural plates like a steel plate or a MS plate, mild steel plate, like that. So you may have layers of wall, which we call it as a composite wall. There what will happen? There we had the outermost convective resistance. Then in between you have a conductive resistance given by the L by Ka value of that corresponding layer. It is not L the overall thickness, but the local thickness La divided by Ka, the conductivity of material A. Then you have Lb by Kb into area. Then you have Lc by Kc into area. And then you have the outermost convective resistance given by 1 by H2 into A. This should be H2. Where they are written 4. I don't know why they have written like that. It should be, even if it is indicated as 4, then it will be H4 into area. So that constitutes your total resistance, and the heat transfer rate will be given by Q dot, capital Q dot should be equal to T infinity 1 minus T infinity 2 divided by the summation of all these resistances, which again you can call is the total resistance, and again you can write a corresponding what you call overall heat transfer coefficient. Okay. And similarly, there may be a case where there may be what you call resistance is not in series. The heat flow is not in taking place in series. Some part of the heat flow is getting branched out. Some part goes through one material, some other part goes through another material, and finally comes out. This we'll discuss today. It is becoming late. Let me make a roll call and then stop it over. Do you have any question?
No, sir.
Okay. Rishabh.